Matt Smith, the Doctor. As the 11th Doctor, he made a huge impact. Well, right from the very beginning, actually, all the way back in 2009, as soon as he was cast, I think a lot of the attention, unsurprisingly, as this is Doctor Who, went on his haircut. Really, I don't think I'd certainly never seen anything quite like this, and it got everybody talking. As did his age. It was such a distinctive look and such a brave pick. Of course, Matt Smith is sadly long gone from the part, and he's picked several sort of big TV roles since. He's done very, very well in various big shows, including The Crown and more recently in The House of the Dragon. Matt Smith is now 41 years old. Charlotte, I was going to say, did you know that? But I'm guessing you almost certainly did, of those amongst us.
I didn't know his exact age, but I knew he was getting older than you think, because he's eternally got that youthful look, Matt. It doesn't matter what age. And I think he's probably going one of those, when he does start to go a little bit grey, he's going to do it very gracefully, because he's just got that sort of feel. Well,
you say gracefully. Does this count as gracefully?
Oh, no, that does not count.
Does that count as gracefully? So, yes, Matt Smith has... he's showing off a colourful new mohawk, Ian. This is his brand new look. He was out to meet up with a friend for lunch earlier on in the month. This was in New York. The new hairstylist for a movie, you'll be pleased to know, is in Darren Aronofsky's new film Caught Stealing. He's starring alongside Austin Butler and Zoe Kravitz in that. Hence this, as you say, this sort of taxi driver look. Do you think, Matt, he's working that? Do you think he can get away with this, Ian?
Listen, he's a good actor, and no doubt he did it obviously for the role, and I think he's going to be fantastic. He's a good actor at his core. He's a really good actor. I've seen him and stuff, so good luck to him. He hasn't made it big in Hollywood yet, but it's only one film away. Do you know what I mean? He just needs the one, doesn't he?
Yeah, but the thing is, I don't think he needs to, because he won't get character roles. And I think that's where Matt thrives, honestly. He needs those sort of more interesting, where he can go deeper down sort of parts.
But who's... Oh, God, I forgot her name now. My brain's gone and shut down. The girl that was with her, the redhead girl, I can't remember her.
Karen Gillan?
Karen Gillan, that's it. Karen Gillan. She did well, didn't she? She basically was a character.
She's done brilliantly.
And she's done huge parts, and she's done independent films as well. So it can be done. I reckon.
I think it's just hard nowadays in Hollywood.
Yes, but no, I hear you. It is very hard. Yeah.
Yeah, he made a big impact internationally as the Doctor, but the movie roles, it hasn't quite worked, has it? There's been sort of flop after flop, really. The most notorious one being Morbius, that kind of Marvel film, the spin-off from Spider-Man. I haven't even seen it yet, Matt. I mean, the thing is, when it's actors that we like, we will defend any extraordinary choice in hairstyle or pretty much any flop, particularly when it's somebody like Matt Smith that's involved, simply because he's so loyal to the show and so loyal to us, and he's a really likeable guy. He recently gave this quote about what it was like for him when he won the role of the Doctor, and what it was like to go from an unknown to being a Time Lord. And he said it was overnight. Nobody knew who I was, and suddenly I was effing Doctor Who. You can imagine. I mean, he's right, very plain speaking, but you can see it transformed his life. He may not be getting the movie roles that he'd like, but I think Matt Smith, maybe this new one, Caught Stealing, this Darren Aronofsky film, that could be the one, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't.
Bloody hell.
I didn't. Look, I mean, I didn't know who he was when he was first announced.
No, did I?
Nor did I.
But I tell you what, like in that initial interview that he did, you could tell that he got it.
Yes.
That he realised how important Doctor Who was to the zeitgeist of Britain and the rest of the world, and how he was iconic in the way that, he's up there with Sherlock Holmes and those sort of, literary characters, and he took it with a lot of respect. He really, really did. And And I remember people disappointed because they thought he was going to be dressed like an emo.
Yeah.
And suddenly here he was in a suit, with a bow tie, and they're like, "Oh man, I was hoping that he was going to be, like grunge or emo or something." And it's like, well, I think he gets it. So I'm looking forward to this. And he really, really, really embodied the character. For me, you could tell that he had it. That I think that he is the best decision that they have ever made for the new series.
Agreed. Totally.
I think a lot of people would stand with that. I mean, Gary, I've seen a lot come and go now. I've been watching this show for years. But I can honestly say that even though I've got my favourites, and Matt Smith isn't it really, he's certainly not in the top 5. When I look back on the incarnations of the Doctor that I miss, weirdly, I miss this one,
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, I think Matt's one of the best Doctors in the current run since 2005. He's so, he's just magic. Like that, we've mentioned this loads of times. The 11th hour, as soon as he's on screen, he's just
the Doctor.
Exactly, yeah. There's no warm-up needed. He's just in it straight away. He's just amazing. He's so good. And it's weird because I think a lot of people, I think a lot of people gravitate towards David Tennant's Doctor just because of the volume of content that he did prior to Capaldi.
And he's the figure of a sort of a classic hero as well, isn't he? The striding hero pushing out his chest with the good looks and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And I think also with David Tennant's initial run, at least, he had the favour of being the Doctor when the viewing figures were at their highest, I believe. So, just the sheer volume of people watching the show at that time was David Tennant. But doesn't matter how much I love David Tennant as the Doctor, I think Matt Smith just has this, just gravitas about him. And he's amazing. He's such a good Doctor.
He is. Yeah. And the thing that he had in common with the other Doctor, like Tom Baker. Tom Baker, kids gravitated towards Tom Baker. It's the same thing with Matt Smith. Kids gravitate towards him. There's something about him that's childlike that kids kind of gravitate towards him. And I think he was one of the best Doctors in the history of Doctor Who. Definitely.
I think also with Matt's Doctor, when people were young when they watched him initially, if they're in their teens or younger, then they didn't really pick up all of the little things Matt did as the Doctor, all the really small movements of facial expressions, or the way he would slightly change his tone of voice. Because you don't when you're young, you just sort of watch the show on a certain level. I think we all do that. It's not having a go. So when they go back and watch his stories when they're older, it's like they rediscover his Doctor. They see
there's a lot of nuance in there, isn't there?
And then they sort of, the appreciation goes up. And I think Matt's Doctor has really had that appreciation sort of go up and up and up.
It's definitely the same in the live chat here at YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, Annex. Lots of comments from people saying the same thing. Cybermat Strike says, Matt built his own Doctor and was bold. What a performance. He did take influence from Patrick Troughton, but I agree. I think it's only the very sort of the earliest set in founding stones of that. There's so much built on top of it that it is his own Doctor. Kieran Coley says when he was announced on that special Doctor Who Confidential announcement, that was a surprise show as well, wasn't it? They sprung that on the British public. Richard said that Moffat picked great Doctors. We do have a voice of dissent. Livens Flame says, I honestly never liked Matt Smith. I was glad to see the back of him, but I think it was mostly the writing, not the acting. And he was bloody good, says Peter Harrington. Philip Royce says here, I first saw Matt in Party Animals, so I knew it'd be great. And he was. I didn't watch that show. They billed that as This Life about politicians, didn't they? And I remember the show being on, but I didn't watch it. The idea of watching a show about a bunch of junior MPs, no.
I mean, seriously, he was one of the best Doctors. I mean, I know there's few people that don't like him, and let me tell you, it is a few people that don't like him. But he was, I mean, as
very few.
As Gary says, immediately when he came out of that TARDIS, you knew he was the Doctor. Everything he did, everything he said, the way he committed his lines, everything, you can tell there was an old man in that young body, and that was the Doctor. Yeah, so
Yeah, and I think Matt brought the eccentric back, because
yeah.
Tennant didn't really have eccentric, and I think Eccleston, he was more damaged and moody, not eccentric. And I think that's what people were missing, even if they didn't know it, about the Doctor a little bit in the modern run at that point.
Northerner,
I think
wasn't
David
it?
Tennant,
Yeah.
had he made David Tennant exaggerated everything. He gurned a lot, he exaggerated, he shouted a lot and stuff like that. And Matt didn't copy him at all. Matt did his own thing. Do you know what I mean? So
Which is the way it should be.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
We've already had people that have tried to copy other Doctors, and it just doesn't work.
No.
They just don't have the acting range. And when Matt was actually announced, I mean, he was the first Doctor that was actually as the actor was younger than me.
Yeah.
So it was really strange, because all of a sudden, you've got all these old men being Doctors, and then you've suddenly got this young guy, and it's like, will he get it? Because he was born in the 80s, when Doctor Who was literally dying, and
no,
so
it wasn't dying.
It was in the late 80s, mate. So did you really like Sylvester McCoy?
When it was,
I loved him.
I think when it was ailing in its popularity, wasn't it? Ever since playing the Doctor, again, something I really respect about Matt Smith is that he's taken a certain amount of chances as well. I mean, was The Crown taking a chance? I don't know, but I think playing Prince Philip, a historical figure who was still alive at the time, I don't think anybody really saw that coming. And stepping into the Game of Thrones universe as well for his latest series for House of the Dragon, still to play a character so far removed from the Doctor or Prince Philip, I think this is very, very brave. And again, it's to the point where I think even a huge dyed-in-the-wool Doctor Who fan who loved his era can watch him in this show and forget you're watching a bloke that used to be the Doctor, in a way that you can't, for example, when you see Peter Davison playing Tristan in All Creatures, it's the Doctor. When you see David Tennant playing the bloke in Broadchurch, it's the Doctor. It's certainly the character he plays in Good Omens. Whereas here, Matt Smith is showing a hell of a lot of range and growth in the... How long has it been since he left the part of the Doctor now, Charlotte?
That long. It feels ages.
He's becoming a senior character actor of some note, and with if not the most distinguished career path. There's plenty of mistakes there on the filmography, but certainly with a long and interesting one.
I think he did something that I think Tennant took a while to learn, which is quite quick after his Doctor Who, he took some roles where he wasn't the good guy, where he wasn't the hero, and he showed actually, I can play sort of bad uns and not very nice people. Whereas Tennant, I feel like he only really started to come out that shadow is when he played a villain in Jessica Jones. That feels like for me when Tennant sort of started to get out the shadow. Whereas Matt, quite early on, he did that. And I think he did that on purpose, because with his Doctor, I've always said this, what I love about his Doctor is there was always that hint of darkness. And when it came out, it was absolutely electrifying. But then you go back to being the child again and the silly. But they were still both convincing. Whereas in House of the Dragon, you just need to watch a couple of scenes and you completely forget at one point he was the person you'd root for when you're watching him. He was the one who you wanted to save the day. You don't want Damien in House of the Dragon to save the day, because it's going to be horrible for everybody involved if he does.
What struck me recently are comments that Matt Smith has made, obviously as somebody who's now gone from one success to another, certainly on television, somebody with a storied career, who some people have grown up watching this guy. He's he's speaking from an informed position when he talks about entertainment, a perception of somebody obviously who works in front of the camera. But obviously, like a lot of us grew up watching television. So he's been speaking just in this last few weeks on the growing trend of publishing and attaching trigger warnings to all our media. I mean, we've had them on CDs and things for some decades now, probably from the late 80s, from a lot of rap that came out from the States, Ian, actually probably from the mid 80s that was, and then into the early 90s in the Seattle sound, those parental advisory stickers, on CDs. So we've had that for quite a long time now, but it started to become quite commonplace attached to movies and TV shows. There's censorship going on of archive content, but new stuff as well. It's being offered on streaming platforms with lots of disclaimers about the things that viewers may see, if they're brave enough to hit play. And Matt is very apprehensive of this trend, and he views it as a dumbing down. He said in the last couple of weeks, he says that it's okay to feel uncomfortable or provoked whilst looking at a painting or watching a play. But I worry that everything's being dialed back and deliberately dumbed down, and isn't being shocked and surprised and stirred the point to a lot of this art. I mean, what do you think about what Matt's said there? I mean, firstly, is he brave to kind of speak out against this sort of growing tide?
He's got to be careful what he says now. But these new laws that's coming to England, there's certain things you can't say. So, what he said was absolutely right. Absolutely right. So, but he better be careful, else he'll get on his door. And they'll come and arrest him. Mind you, he's got the TARDIS, so he can go backwards in time, I guess. I don't know. But
he's got a dragon. He can just stand on there.
Exactly. Jump on the dragon. He's all right. Yeah.
Because the TV, when we look back on the TV that's sort of informed us, arrested us, the things that have kind of marked out even our childhoods, things that we remember seeing, they may have scared us, or they may have been things that we weren't expecting. They're the things that are often the most memorable things, such as, people only ever talk about the final episode of Blake 7, for example, because it was quite shocking. And if there'd have been a warning, and there's numerous TV shows and films that are like that, where if people had been warned about things that were coming up, would they have been as memorable? Would people have stayed to watch?
This generation's really soft, aren't they? The new generation of people and stuff like that. They're really soft. They can't take it. Again, I'd say to you that I was watching a film with my nieces, and they were getting really stressed out. Watching Aliens, she was getting really stressed out. She actually said, "This woman's stressing me out. Why did she get out there?" Blah, 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 whatever. So those kind of things really stressed them out. So I can understand why this crazy generation is putting things on. But I remember going to Blockbuster Video and renting out zombie flesh eaters and stuff, and coming home and putting that in. And my dad goes, "What are you watching?" I go, "Zombie flesh eaters." "All right, and then don't forget to pull the plug out after you finish." You know what I mean? That's it. It didn't really
to be fair, there was certification. Was there certification then, or was that before that came in? Come to think of it,
I think it was just coming in when Blockbuster Video. Well, actually, before Blockbuster Video was forming, but they used to have all these independent video stores around, and we used to rent from one of them. Do you know what I mean? But as kids, right, we loved that stuff. We loved seeing zombies. We loved seeing people getting on films, getting shot or beat up or whatever.
And oftentimes the titles of such films like that would be a giveaway, wouldn't they, Gary? I mean, the point that Matt Smith is trying to make here, I've got a further quote from him, and he suggests that we're telling audiences that they're going to be scared before they've watched something. Yeah. And he believes that's harming the experience. What do you think of this? I mean, is Matt, if he isn't taking his career in his hands here, I think it's quite refreshing to see an actor speaking as a member of the public would speak myself. What's your take on this?
Yeah, I mean, he's speaking the truth for sure. I think he's just at that point that a lot of actors and musicians, they get to the point where they see this happening and they either stay silent or they comment on. We have this a lot with bands and musicians who hate people with their mobile phones out at concerts and stuff like that. They feel like they're not experiencing it properly because something else is getting in the way. And I think Matt's trying to say, look, you're not going to get the full experience if you already know that you're going to poo your pants. We're already telling you that beforehand. So I don't know. I agree with him. I think it builds character, in my opinion. As a youngster, I mean, the first film that my dad ever rented from a video shop, we used to call them back in the day, I was 7 years old. And the very first film I ever watched that my dad rented was Predator, the first one.
Yes.
And my mum was like, how'd you get on with your dad at the weekend? I was like, oh, Mum, it was amazing. I saw this film where people were chopped to bits, aliens, blood everywhere. And she was like, okay, I'm just going to ring your dad just quickly. I'll be back in a minute. But that, in my opinion, that builds your kind of foundation for the things that you go on to then enjoy and make potentially and stuff like that. So I totally agree with him. I just think, like Ian said, I think he just needs to be a tad careful with this because he doesn't want to alienate himself from other makers and creators that might not want to have the same voice as he does.
A moment ago, we were talking about the difference between Matt's characterization and others. And when I look back to the difference between him and David Tennant, I think we talk about that quite a lot because they were right next to one another and because there's only really a fag paper between them in terms of popularity. But as I said, David played the character very heroically. Matt Smith, and when you did see the 10th Doctor be scared, be unnerved and in danger, but the way that Matt played it, I felt he had that kind of childlike quality where he was actually very brave. And I think you could sometimes see the fear and uncertainty on his face in situations. You didn't need to see necessarily beads of sweat on his brow or tears in his eyes or a tremor on his jaw to know that what he was doing was that he was digging deep to push through in a way that was very, very childlike. And I don't think it's necessarily a better way to do it than Tennant. It's just different. It's just different. Yeah. And when I think about Doctor Who and the fact that the Doctor, the companion is our reference point, Ian. More often than not, it's a she. The companion, she's there as our kind of representation, our totem, if you like. And the Doctor is the kind of the beacon of hope and the person who will keep us safe. I think that's a very precise balance that Matt struck beautifully there. So the fact that he understands how the audience would look at this, I'm not at all surprised.
Every Doctor, right, from the first one straight up to Peter Capaldi, right? Oh, I can't pronounce his surname properly. Sorry about that. They all were very different. They all played them very different. I'm sorry, but Peter got the worst scripts out of everyone, and that's when the Doctor was dying, basically. We all know why. We won't go through that. But everyone played them differently. Tennant didn't play it like the last Doctor. It was Matt that actually brought the American viewers in. His Doctor brought attention to the show. And it was really big in the States because of Matt. But everyone was different. It only failed. Doctor Who, in my opinion, only failed when they changed management, so to speak. In my opinion, I love Matt. I think Matt Smith's great.
But a show like Doctor Who, it's probably a tougher sell now than it had been before, particularly internationally, where TV is kind of pitched much more. There's a lot more focus groups. There's a lot more study of demographics, isn't there? Whereas Doctor Who is something that certainly in Britain, it's very much the case that the family watch it together. And it's sort of, if you try and sort of reverse engineer it too much, there's a chance you're going to break the magic. I mean, and if there were trigger warnings, for example, on some of the 70s stories or warnings about, you might be frightened by this, you didn't need any kind of warning plastered across Doctor Who because the theme tune and the title sequence were enough to let you know you were being taken there to that place. And that definitely carried on into the new series too. The magic was still there. No extra graphics or disclaimers were needed, Matt. It was part. If you're bringing back Doctor Who, you bring this back too, or it is not Doctor Who.
Kids love being scared, though. I remember when I started off with Pertwee, right? I remember watching Pertwee episodes, and I was scared, but I loved it. You sit there and you your hands over your eyes. Yeah, everybody says you go behind the sofa. I never went behind. That's stupid. Nobody goes behind the sofa. But I had my hands over my eyes, you know, in certain episodes of Pertwee stuff and stuff like that. They in those days they knew that being scared would attract the kids, right? And now they're trying to mollycoddle them, and it's just ridiculous, in my opinion. So
Matt Smith agrees. We've got more from him. He says too much policing of stories and being afraid to bring them out because a climate is a certain way is a shame. I'm not sure I'm on board with trigger warnings at all, says Matt Smith.
I think the other side of what Matt's talking about, and it shows in that quote, I think what he doesn't want stories, whether that's the writing or just the conception of what you can put in a story, to be limited. And I think we are very much on that road at the moment and trigger warnings are a part of that. Because if creators are thinking, oh God, if I put this scene in, I need to warn beforehand, then it might discourage you from doing it. You might think, no, actually, I'll be safer. I won't do that, as I won't be brave. And I think a lot of the time, the things that keep with us, which are scary, are also when writers have the freedom to do something that's very close to the bone, that's actually touches on something a bit uncomfortable. And I think that's what Matt's talking about here. But you can do that with the other side. I can remember when we had a lot of stuff, I can't remember how many years ago now, when a lot of classic comedies got warnings saying basically the viewpoints of
warning,
this time period.
This joke might be funny, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And the famous one was Fawlty Towers, because they got the episode, which was the German, and they plastered that with, these jokes are from a certain time period. And then you looked at what they were talking about, and it's like, no, what they're doing in Fawlty Towers is timeless, because what it is, it's showing a man who's stuck in the past, who's not moved on from the past, and he's making a load of jokes that are insensitive.
The joke was on him,
because he's an idiot, and because we don't want to be him. So it wasn't celebrating that behavior, it was ridiculing it. And that's what comedy needs to do. And if you've got this environment which is against that, then you won't get people like John Cleese we got back in the day. You won't get that sort of mentality of let's challenge people's.
We're not getting it.
And if characters in adventure fiction like Doctor Who aren't challenged, aren't challenged by darkness, by fear, and by loss, by our inner demons, then it's going to have a similar detrimental effect, isn't it? It's to frighten children in a non-horrific way. That's the way it used to be described, Gary.
I think. Sorry, mate. I think what's important as well as that, Dan, is for Doctor Who to be the hero, to actually show people that light can overcome darkness and stuff like that. It's very important.
Well, to be visibly, if necessary, be fearful, be afraid, and be protective of those in your care, and still overcome that. Still get to the other side, Gary. I think it's a cornerstone of adventure fiction. Otherwise, where's the adventure? Exactly. Just traveling from A to B, that's not enough. There has to be some sort of stakes, don't there?
Yeah. Matt, what were you going to say?
Oh, no, that's all right. You go, Gary.
So I think, but I don't think this also comes from creators and artists and stuff like that. I think some of the studios that make these things, I think they want to remove themselves from any kind of liability and any ownership on that stuff as well, because I'm guessing, I'm not an expert on this, but I'm guessing that all the writers and directors who want to make scary stuff, dark stuff, and all those things, I think they want to do that like they always have done. But it's the studios and the publishers that are more like, if little Timmy, passes out with fear because we didn't tell him beforehand it was scary, then that's on us. And so you then create this domino effect of, well, remember what happened last year with little Timmy? So now we can't do that and all the rest of it. So I think there's this kind of...
There's a lot of truth in that.
There's an invisible wall that's put up between the artists and the people that put the thing out, because I don't know, Steven Spielberg's not going to sit down with little Timmy's mum and say, I'm sorry about that. I didn't. Of course not. But little Timmy's mum will complain directly to 20th Century Fox or the BBC or whatever.
I think that's the difference. Now you've said that. I think some of this could be the era of the streaming platform and a more global entertainment industry where everybody watches the same things pretty much at the same time, coming from the same places. Because you're quite right. A lot of the big studios do that, and they have legions of solicitors. We're told quite a lot. Sorry, Americans watching. I know I've got a big American audience, but apparently America as a nation is a lot more litigious than Britain. But we are getting there, and so you're quite right. If people can take somebody to court for something, then they probably will. So that's probably why we have things like this, a content warning: the following video contains material that may be harmful or traumatizing to some audiences. It's on the surface, it seems innocuous, but
The big issue is, Dan, that we are at a stage now where everybody overthinks things.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing they go to is, well, who are we going to offend? Why do we, what sort of things? I mean, there's a lot of stuff from the 1990s now that is problematic. And so what they're doing is that they're actually redoing a lot of things from the 90s and making it for their sort of, for their sort of
sensibilities.
Modern sensibilities. And the issue is that they've watered it down so much that it there's nothing recognizable about what it actually was. I mean, I was watching stuff the other day, Looney Tunes, for God's sake, and Looney Tunes has a trigger warning on it,
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah. You actually get warnings now. A lot of the things you can't actually buy
Don't put
Looney
that
Tunes
shotgun in your mouth
anymore,
because your beak will spin around to the other side of your head if it goes off.
But you know what, right?
you'll be
Putting
dead.
something up like this, right, is stupid, right? It basically...
You're a filmmaker. Have you ever put anything on any of your films?
No, but what I'm saying is that when you watch Netflix, they have the little thing at the side saying what certificate it is, don't they? And it says at the top in small writing, it says violence, blah blah blah, before the thing starts.
Yeah.
And that's good enough. Why is this so big on screen? You know what I mean? It's like, can't people read? Do you know what I mean? It's just I think this is a joke. It's really stupid to have this on anything.
Do you remember, Ian, now in the late 70s into the 80s, if you watched television past about 11 at night, terrestrial TV, there'd be a dot that'd be in the middle of the screen, beep, like that, and there'd be, don't forget to turn off your set.
Yeah.
in case it blows up. That because people believed that if you stared at that white dot, that your television would explode.
Oh, what about the test card where if you look close enough, you can see her poke poke the clown or something like that? Was stupid as well, isn't it? If you look closely, her hand will slowly move and poke the clown in the eye.
The more you tell kids not to do something, the more they're going to do it, Charlotte.
Well, I think as well, it started with the warnings, and now they are physically editing stuff out.
Yes.
They are physically changing things just because the warning wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
So it leads to that editorial, re-editorializing.
Yeah. It's like we didn't trust the audiences enough that we put that on now. Yeah. Now we have to decide for them what they can and cannot
Part of the nanny state. Matthew Pounder here says a similar thing. Trigger warnings now are more of a moral judgment. He's onto something there.
They've actually put something. They've on the film Splash when she jumps back into the water. They've added CGI of her hair covering her ass. It's like what? Why?
That's vandalism. That is vandalism.
Why would you do that?
Well, and also I think was there something with Roger Rabbit that they changed Jessica Rabbit or something? I can't think of. It was exactly
her dress.
No, they didn't have underpants on her. They didn't have there's one. Look, I mean, Disney used to do a lot of things like this.
I haven't heard of this.
But yes. So what happens is that she's in the cab in I can't remember
Okay.
Lenny the cab, and suddenly Lenny the cab moves out and she falls out. And when she turns,
What, falls out or falls out?
Mini second, we see her map of Tassie, I guess you could say.
But they put that deliberately, though,
no,
Matt.
there's nothing there. It's just the fact that they didn't colour in her pants.
Oh, my word.
But you know what?
I think as
they
well,
removed it.
Yeah.
I think there was something else that they literally like something to do with her dress. More than that, they just made it less sexy.
So they put something in there, but I won't talk about that. But they allowed the little baby to walk underneath the woman, and her dress goes up, and
and he looks up, doesn't he?
Yeah, and he looks up. They allow that, but they don't allow the.
I think in some cases,
as well, the thing is with Matt, because he's not one to usually talk about politics or sort of anything that's
he
very
keeps his counsel.
To him, he's the opposite of Tennant, who every week we know what exactly Tennant thinks about every bit of current day politics.
Whatever his wife thinks, that's the general gist. But you're quite right. I think Matt is, as a creative, somebody involved in the creative process, he's conscientious and mindful too of the audience. Maybe he's had some feedback. I don't know, because he's a pretty regular guy. You see him in the cafe, you see him in the pub. Admittedly, I've never seen him twerking in Starbucks yet, but you never know. I wouldn't rule it out.
That's the thing. Matt makes me think of how actors used to be. That sort of idea of you didn't know a lot about their personal life. You didn't know about their sort of personal views on things,
political leanings. Yeah.
And so he's kept that all very private, even when he has, like before you said, how Doctor Who did make him a household name. It utterly changed sort of the fact that beforehand he was a jobbing actor. He was sort of very low key, and then he was suddenly very high key. But that he still managed to keep that sort of distance in a good way. And I think because he's like that, when Matt does actually touch upon these things, you take notice more. You actually sort of go, no, this is something that's clearly, it means a lot to him, because he's also made comments in the past about this sort of stuff. It's not a recent thing about him. He has made previous comments about
maybe now it's particularly timely. I got this comment here from Lee Smith who says we need cringe warnings on our entertainment now. And Richard Brooks suggests that a consensus of fear of offence is the sign of a dark age.
We're there already.
Ominous. Yeah,
we're getting the ads. I put my low voice on for that, Gary. Did you notice?
Nice.
Peter Harrington says some obviously guidelines, but not this. It's over the top, a rites of passage thing, but be parental too. So to be responsible, and again, it's the use of common sense, isn't it? I mean, I don't want to see people genuinely, stuff like this, for example, Ian. These have been on films for years, warning this film contains flashing images that could cause discomfort and trigger seizures for people with epilepsy. I don't want to see people having epileptic fits or literally going into comas and things and shitting themselves. I don't want people to suffer with this, but there's got to be a certain sense of accountability, responsibility for one's own actions and for the people in one's care that we take and decide for ourselves. I've raised 6 kids. I didn't need anybody telling me what I should or shouldn't show them, and they've all grown up. Most of them have grown up to be pretty responsible people. The ones that are grown up, I've got a clean scorecard so far, and I haven't got a problem with anything like this. I don't want people to suffer. But I do believe that sitting down in front of something and not necessarily knowing exactly where you're going to go isn't irresponsible. It's not decadent in any way. It's certainly not going to destroy society or traumatise a generation now any more than it would have done in the 70s.
Yeah, I think there's a certain level of subjectivity as well to that stuff as well. I mean,
yeah,
it's a generational thing as well. I mean, the warning about people having seizures and stuff, that's good. That's a you need to know this sort of thing, But in terms of you might get scared by X is more of a, that person might be scared by it. I'm not scared by it. So there's a certain level of, personal bias, I think, in there as well. I think it's a generational thing for sure. I remember back in the day when my older brother used to watch repeats of The Incredible Hulk, you know, the old Bill Bixby stuff,
Yeah.
and the scene where he used to literally Hulk out and transform. That scared I hated that.
It terrified me when I was a kid.
Yeah, my mum would walk past and be like, "What's the matter with you? What's the matter with you? Come on, watch it." So my mum was like a hard ass kind of parent. So it was like, "Oh, okay, mum, sorry. I'll watch it, don't worry." And then like 2 minutes, I'm scared again. But that was just the way it was for a lot of kids.
My sister used to run out the room in the beginning
healthy.
sequence when he was, in the beginning sequence where he pushes the car and his eyes would like. Yeah. My sister would just bolt out the living room. She was so terrified of
it. It was
that,
cool.
so,
It scared the crap out of everyone though. But you know, from a generational point of view, I think a lot of younger parents these days wouldn't be so. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know why, because fear and being scared is part of life as well. You're either going to get it on a TV show or in real life. Do you know what I mean? So
or TikTok.
It's part of life. It makes you stronger. Well, in theory, it makes you stronger. I don't know about this
I think they're trying to remove certain emotions, to be honest, from people. Like, I don't know. You know how you used to have this like fear and that sort of thing when you were, you know, back in the caveman days, they used to have like this fear, and that's the reason why they think now today modern wise is why a lot of people have a lot of anxiety and everything. It's gone through the generations, and I think they're trying to.
There's something primal that's being sort of isolated and removed from the human being almost.
Yeah, and I think they're trying to and also a good word is desensitize. I think they're trying to desensitize a lot of the modern day kids of this generation anyway, and I think social media is playing a massive part in that. And you know.
So we try not to blame social media for everything here, but now and again it does seem to track back, doesn't it? Rob Alexander here says, trigger warnings have got out of control. I once saw a trigger warning of adult themes on Terry and June, the 1980s situation comedy. I can believe it, Ian. I'm laughing because I know that Rob's not said that for comic effect. Did you enjoy it?
My first episode of that the other day. No, I didn't.
What was he doing? Was he mowing the lawn, painting the shed, or too tame for Matt?
No. He was trying to get rid of a sign, a for sale sign, and that was the crux of it. But there's a joke in there that is it's a racial joke. That, you know, he's not racist, and yet all of a sudden he'll turn around and he'll say a naughty word or something, you know.
Yes.
But you can actually hear the audience going. You know, an actual, you know, people going, "Oh my goodness, you know, he is," you know. But that's the whole point of the thing. Is like, you know, it's a shock. He's saying, "I'm not racist," and then all of a sudden he'll go, "Oh bloody," you know, something.
Yeah. He'll say something.
Like, yeah.
Here's the thing that's a bit weird. If this is all made of kids and like we're trying to make them not scared of anything, I can tell you'll be surprised at what ages kids still watch stuff.
Yeah. That
they will say, "Oh, I watched this," and you're like, "How old are you?" And it doesn't matter. They can try and like put all these trigger warnings on, all these warnings. But if a child wants to watch something on a streaming and they know how to do it, they will find it. They will watch it. I would argue it's easier than ever nowadays.
It is. I was flicking through X a couple of days ago, and I was watching somebody jumped off some roof or something like that. You didn't see him hit the ground, but he jumped. Someone got hit by a car. Some person got beat up in McDonald's. Do you know what I mean? You know, it's like
it's on Instagram. There are entire channels set on Instagram that you're just watching, and then you're like, I think that person just died.
Yeah,
you know?
and they're worried
and that's what I'm saying. I think they're trying to desensitize the kids today. You know,
when you
really
put it like that, I agree. Something's not quite right, is it? Stephen Braddock said, the world of warnings is mad. I work in a supermarket, and it actually says on a shirt that we sell, please do not iron shirt while in plastic. Yeah, I can believe it. We've got lots of people bemoaning trigger warnings. Kelly says, I'm tired of trigger warnings. I'm seriously tired of them. People say they're on screen sometimes just for seconds, but there is something there's something invasive about them that I think that certainly that's against Britishness. I think British people in particular get really wound up by them. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, international viewers. Is it actually more general than that? I think it's against Britishness and our sense of being the sort of captains of our own ships, kings of our own castles, if you like. I was annoyed the Hulk didn't Hulk out enough, says Liven's Flame. There you go.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. You think, I know the scary bit's coming, but you'd find it irresistible. You'd want to watch. You'd want to watch it.
As well, they stick with you. It's like in that first series when Doctor Who came back, one of the most memorable episodes was the idiot was "What's Are You My Mummy?" That whole two-parter because of the imagery of the child with the gas mask.
Yeah.
Because of how frightening they made that child. I can remember being absolutely transfixed with the scene when they're in the office and then you hear the tape and you hear the conversation and then suddenly it stops and then the doctor says the tape stopped and then you hear the child and that's just, it spooks you because it's that primal what Matt was talking about of you thought they were safe, you thought they were okay, and then suddenly the child appears and it's like, no, we're in danger now. And to have that sort of safe version of being scared, that safe version of having that fear, which you know at the end it's going to be okay, but you enjoy having that moment while you watch it. And that's,
you're right.
You can't lose that. I think that's such an integral part of Doctor Who. And that's what Matt's talking about as well.
But what are they going to do? Stop you from going on roller coasters now? Do you know what I mean? You get scared when you get on a roller coaster. You're not going to stop you from going on a roller coaster? What the hell?
I think each person on this panel can think of the time of Doctor Who that they remember the most.
Oh, God.
And it'll be a scary moment.
Yes.
So for me, even though I watched John Pertwee and everything like that, the scene where, Sarah Jane's face falls out in the android invasion, for me, is the linchpin of why I love this show so much. And the fact that I wanted to see what happened next, to see how the Doctor got out of the situation, and what happened to Sarah Jane. And I was only 4, and so I think there's just certain moments, and I mean every single moment in that picture that you've got there, Dan, is something freaking terrifying. Yeah. And it just it's just something. I mean, those damn dummies that came out of the you don't even see them come out of the shop windows,
No.
But to you in your head, you filled it in that they came out of the shop windows, and then when you actually see it, you're like, they used a sound effect because they couldn't afford to break the window.
Yeah, they couldn't.
So it's just one of those things, that's it's part of Doctor Who, and when you start to remove that, there's nothing scary about the latest series.
Yeah, it's
I can't talk about what the Chibnall area at all.
It was low. It was low on scares, wasn't it? I think the giant slug things in Dot and Bob are probably the closest that we got. Maybe the Sutek dog
Space
thing.
Babies was scary. Space Babies was scary.
Dad, it was scary until they literally got a lead out.
It's hard to say, isn't it? Look, I think it's fantastic that Matt Smith has spoken about this as an actor, as a public figure, if you like, and just as a bloke that people like and can relate to. I think that even though his quotes are hardly sort of exhaustive on the subject, they're very relatable and in tune with how the British public think, and certainly with what Doctor Who viewers want. But let us know what you think in the live chat there. What do you think about Matt Smith's words with the times, and where would Doctor Who be without those scary moments and creatures all the way back through our childhoods, whether it was the new series or the classic series, right back to almost day one and the original Doctor? That was part of the success story of Doctor Who, wasn't it? And look at all the bolts and the fangs there of 1960s Doctor Who. Let us know in the comments section your favourite, scariest moments and what you think about Matt Smith's words there to the Times about trigger warnings.